The jungle was alive with sound, 1,000 voices of strange creatures echoing through the thick green trees. Ethan stumbled forward, his clothes torn, his breathing heavy. His ship had crashed only a day ago, and now he was lost in a world he did not know. The air was wet and heavy, every breath filled with the scent of earth and unknown flowers. He carried only a small survival pack, a knife, and his courage. He had heard stories about predator planets, worlds where humans never lasted long, but he had never believed he would land on one. Now every shadow looked like danger, and every branch seemed to hide eyes that followed him. A branch cracked. Ethan froze, his heart beat faster. He scanned the trees. Something was watching. He gripped his knife tighter, but his hands were shaking. Slowly, he stepped back. Then, out of the thick leaves, small shapes moved. Ethan braced himself, expecting claws and teeth. Instead, 3 small creatures ran forward. Their eyes glowed gold in the dim light, their fur black with streaks of silver. They were predator cubs. Ethan's first thought was to run. Every story about predators said the same thing, never let them corner you. But before he could move, the cubs did something he never expected. They leapt at him, not to attack, but to cling. Tiny claws hooked into his clothes, soft growls turned into purrs. They wrapped around him like children hugging their parent. Ethan stood frozen, his knife still in his hand. He looked down at the cubs pressed against his chest and arms. They were warm, trembling slightly, but not with fear, with trust. "What? What are you doing?" he whispered, his voice barely a breath. The answer came from the trees. A roar shook the jungle. Deep, powerful, filled with anger. The cubs flinched, but did not let go. Shadows shifted, and figures emerged. They were the Drakari, the predators of this world. Towering beasts walking upright like humans but covered in thick scales and armored hide. Their eyes burned like fire, claws sharp enough to cut stone. The hunters of the jungle had come. One of them growled low, a sound that made the ground vibrate. Another pointed at Ethan, teeth bared. The cubs should have let go. They should have run back to their kind, but they clung tighter, pressing their faces into Ethan's chest. The Drakari froze, confusion flashing across their beastly faces. This was not right. Cubs never chose prey. Cubs never protected food. Yet here they were, refusing to leave the human. Ethan's mind raced. He knew he should run. He knew he should fight. But something told him not to. Instead, he held the cubs close, his knife lowered, his body shaking but steady. The leader of the Drakari stepped forward. His scales were dark red, his body covered with scars of many battles. His voice was deep, like thunder. "The cubs have chosen," he growled. The other hunters hissed in protest. One shouted that the human was weak, prey, food. Another demanded they tear him apart, but the leader raised his clawed hand, silencing them. Ethan stood still, not understanding their words but feeling their meaning. His heart pounded, sweat rolled down his face. He had no idea why the cubs had clung to him, but he knew this moment would decide if he lived or died. One cub looked up at him, eyes wide and glowing. It made a soft sound like a call, and Ethan, without thinking, placed his hand gently on its head. The cub purred louder. The jungle grew silent. The Drakari hunters stared. Their cubs had never shown trust to anyone outside their kind, and now 3 of them clung to a human, refusing to let go. The leader stepped closer until his shadow fell across Ethan. His claws could end Ethan's life in one strike. His teeth glistened in the dim light, but he did know. It'd attack. Instead, he lowered his head, sniffing the air around Ethan. Finally, he spoke again, his voice a low rumble. "The omen has come." The hunters looked at each other in shock. Some hissed in fear, others in anger. The cubs pressed tighter into Ethan's chest, as if they understood the danger. Ethan had no idea what was happening. He only knew one thing: the predators were not killing him yet. Something about these cubs had changed everything. The leader turned to his hunters and gave a command. The Drakari lowered their weapons, though their eyes still burned with hate. The leader pointed toward the jungle path. Then, with a growl, he ordered Ethan to move. Ethan walked slowly, the cubs still clinging. The hunters surrounded him, their eyes sharp, their weapons ready. He was not free, he was not safe, but he was alive. As they led him deeper into the jungle, Ethan felt the cubs breathing against him. Their warmth gave him strength. He whispered softly, "Why me?" The cubs only purred, and the jungle swallowed them all. The jungle path twisted like a serpent, thick roots rising from the ground as if trying to trip every step. Ethan walked slowly, his breath tight. The predator hunters around him moved like shadows, silent and dangerous. Their golden eyes never left him. The cubs were still clinging to him, their claws dug into his torn clothes. He could feel their tiny hearts racing against his chest. They refused to leave him, no matter how much the hunters growled. The Drakari leader walked ahead, his massive form part of the darkness itself. His scarred back told of countless battles. Ethan knew he was being taken somewhere, but he didn't know if it was to live or die. Every story about predators ended in the same way. Humans didn't last, yet here he was, alive only because 3 cubs had chosen him. Why? The hunters whispered to each other in a language Ethan couldn't understand, but the way their claws flexed and their tails lashed in anger told him enough. They wanted him dead, some snarled. When they looked at him, some looked afraid. Finally, the jungle opened into a wide clearing. Huge stone walls rose from the earth, carved with strange glowing marks. At the center was a pit where fire burned, casting tall shadows across the ground. Around it stood more Drakari, warriors, mothers, elders, all turned their eyes toward the human who walked in with their cubs wrapped around him. The whispers began at once. A human, a prey creature, a soft one, and yet chosen. The leader raised his clawed hand. Silence fell like a blade. He turned toward the elders, his deep voice shaking the ground. Ethan didn't know the words, but the tone carried power. It was a declaration. The cubs stirred, letting out soft cries. They pressed tighter into Ethan, their glowing eyes locked on the elders. One elder hissed, pointing at Ethan with a sharp bone staff. The voice was harsh, filled with fury. The others growled in agreement. Several hunters stepped forward ready to strike Ethan down, but before claws could touch him, the cubs roared. Their small voices rose in unison, high and piercing. The sound stopped the predators in their tracks. The cubs' eyes glowed brighter, and they refused to release the human. Gasps echoed through the gathering. Predators stepped back in fear. Ethan didn't move. His heart raced so fast it felt like it would tear out of his chest. But he held the cubs close, as if protecting them even from their own kind. The leader growled again, louder than all the rest. His words rolled like thunder. The firelight flickered. Shadows danced across the carvings on the walls. Ethan felt the weight of ancient history pressing down. One elder's voice trembled now. The word repeated again and again. Omen, omen. Ethan looked at their faces. He didn't need translation. He saw it in their eyes. The cubs choosing him was not just strange, it was prophecy. But not everyone agreed. Some warriors shouted in fury. One leapt forward, raising a blade of bone and iron. Ethan flinched, his body tightened for the strike. At the last second, the cubs roared again. This time their cries shook the very fire in the pit. The flames bent as if the sound pushed against them. The warrior stopped, fear flashing across his eyes. He stepped back, his weapon lowered. The clearing fell silent. Only the crackle of fire and the soft purring of the cubs could be heard. The leader turned, his burning eyes locked on Ethan. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if every word carried the weight of ages. Ethan didn't know the language, but he felt the meaning inside his bones. You are not prey. Ethan's breath caught. He stared at the massive predator, sweat dripping down his face. The cubs purred louder, as if they understood. The leader then pointed to the sky. His claws sliced the air. His voice rose into a roar that made the very ground tremble. The rest of the tribe echoed with their own roars. But beneath the thunder of voices, Ethan noticed something else. The elders looked uneasy. Their eyes narrowed. Their claws tapped the ground nervously. They had seen something long ago, something they had hoped never to see again. The cubs had chosen the human, and now the tribe was divided. Half saw it as destiny. Half saw it as danger. Ethan stood there, the cubs wrapped around him, and he realized a terrible truth. The predators might not kill him yet, but they also might never let him go. The jungle wind howled through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of fire and fear. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan whispered to himself, I'm not their prisoner, I'm their omen. And in the shadows beyond the firelight, something else stirred, watching. Waiting. The night was heavy, the air thick with the call of unseen creatures. Ethan sat near the fire pit. At the edge of the Drakari camp, his hands trembled as he held the cubs close. They had finally fallen asleep, their tiny bodies warm against him, but the eyes of the tribe never left him. Warriors stood with weapons ready, elders whispered among themselves, mothers pulled their young away. All feared him, all hated him, yet none dared touch him because the cubs would not let him go. Ethan tried to steady his breath. He had survived one day, but how long could he last among predators who saw him as an omen? His heart told him there was more to this than chance. He looked at the cubs' glowing eyes, remembering the way their cries had bent fire and silenced warriors. There was power here, power he didn't understand. When the moon rose high, one of the younger hunters approached. Unlike the others, his eyes were curious, not filled with hate. He dropped a slab of meat near Ethan, a silent offering. Ethan nodded in thanks, though he doubted the hunter understood. But before Ethan could rest, the leader growled. His claw pointed to the jungle beyond. A command. 2 hunters stepped forward, grabbed Ethan roughly, and dragged him to his feet. The cubs screeched, their claws digging deeper into his clothes, refusing to be torn away. The Drakari moved as one, leading Ethan out of the camp. Their torches burned bright, casting wild shadows across the trees. The jungle roared with sound, monsters calling to each other in the dark. As they walked, Ethan noticed something. The cubs shifted in his arms, their eyes glowing faintly. Each time a branch moved or a shadow stirred, the cubs growled before the danger came. Moments later, giant insect creatures crawled from the dark, or snake-like beasts slithered across the path. The Drakari killed them quickly, but Ethan realized the cubs had sensed them first. The hunters noticed too. Their growls changed, their eyes flicked toward Ethan with new suspicion. The cubs were not just attached to him, they were protecting him. Finally, they reached a place unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. At the center of the jungle stood massive ruins, stone towers cracked with age, overgrown with vines. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. The sight made Ethan's skin crawl. The leader raised his claw. The hunters stopped. Their eyes burned with fear and reverence. Ethan realized this was no ordinary place. This was sacred. One of the elders hissed, pointing at the ruins. The cubs shifted restlessly, whining softly. Their golden eyes locked on the symbols carved deep into the stone. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't understand why, but the sight of those symbols stirred something inside him. They were not alien to him, not fully. Some lines curved like human writing. Some shapes matched marks he had seen in old Earth history books. Impossible, he whispered under his breath. The leader growled, forcing Ethan forward. The hunters surrounded him as he stepped into the ruins. The air grew colder, silent. The jungle sounds faded, as if the forest itself feared this place. The cubs whimpered now, pressing against Ethan. He whispered softly, trying to calm them, his own fear rising like a storm in his chest. Inside the ruins, the walls glowed brighter. He reached out, his fingers brushing the stone, and at his touch, the light flared, spreading across the carvings like fire. The Drakari gasped, stepping back in shock. Ethan stumbled, his heart pounding. The light poured into his eyes, his mind flooded with images. Humans standing in the same ruins long ago, building, commanding. The jungle obeying them, the predators kneeling. He fell to his knees, the vision burning into him. The cubs roared, their small voices echoing through the chamber like thunder. When the light faded, Ethan gasped for air. The Drakari stared in silence. Some fell to their knees, others roared in fury. The leader ebbed closer, his eyes like fire. He growled words Ethan couldn't understand, but the meaning was clear. The prophecy was real. The cubs pressed tighter to Ethan, purring loudly now. Their eyes glowed like molten gold. Ethan realized the terrible truth. Humanity had been here before, long ago, and whatever his ancestors had left behind in this jungle was still alive, still waiting. The Drakari elders hissed in panic. Some shouted for Ethan's death, others shouted for his worship. The tribe was breaking apart. Ethan gripped the cubs tighter, whispering, "Why me? Why now?" The answer was not spoken, but he felt it in the ruins around him. The jungle had chosen, and far away, deeper in the darkness, something else awakened. Its roar shook the trees, ancient and furious, a sound that made even the Drakari tremble. The cubs did not let go. The ruins glowed faintly even after the light faded. The Drakari still argued in their harsh voices, their tails lashing with rage and fear. Some wanted Ethan dead. Some wanted him spared. Others whispered the word omen again and again. Ethan sat on the cold stone floor, his chest rising and falling quickly. The cubs pressed against him, their purrs deep and steady. He stroked their fur, his trembling hand calming as their warmth sank into him. For the first time since the crash, he felt he was not alone. The leader of the Drakari raised his claws and silenced the chaos. His eyes locked on Ethan, his scarred face unreadable. Then, with a low growl, he ordered the tribe to move. Ethan was dragged back to the camp, but this time things were different. The cubs refused to be carried by anyone else. They clung tighter, snapping at warriors who tried to touch them. Their tiny teeth drew blood from a hunter's hand, and the tribe gasped. Cubs had never bitten their own kind for prey. That night, the Drakari prepared food. They roasted meat over the fire, tearing strips with their sharp teeth. Ethan was given nothing. He sat hungry, weak, his stomach twisting. But then the cubs acted. They dragged pieces of meat toward him, dropping it at his feet. The tribe froze, every eye locked on the strange sight. The cubs refused to eat until Ethan did. Growls of anger rose, but the leader silenced them again. Ethan picked up the meat slowly. He hesitated, then took a bite. The cubs purred louder, finally eating their share. The Drakari hissed in shock, but none dared strike. From that moment, the bond grew. Each day, the cubs followed Ethan's every move. Each night, they curled against him, protecting him from the cold. But danger waited in the jungle. One evening, while the hunters prepared for a raid against a rival clan, Ethan wandered near the edge of the camp. The cubs padded beside him, purring softly. Suddenly, the forest grew silent. No insects, no birds, no howls, only silence. Ethan stopped, his breath caught in his throat. The cubs' ears twitched, their glowing eyes fixed on the trees. They growled low, their fur bristled. Then, from the shadows, a massive beast emerged, larger than any predator Ethan had seen. Its body was covered in spines, its jaws lined with teeth like knives. Its eyes glowed red. The cubs roared, their tiny voices fierce. Ethan stood frozen, knife in hand. He knew it was useless against a monster like this. The beast lunged. Ethan acted without thinking. He pushed the cubs behind him, raising his knife as if his fragile body could block the strike. The monster's claws slashed down, but before they could tear him apart, the Drakari warriors roared and charged. Spears and blades struck the beast, driving it back. The fight was brutal. Blood sprayed, claws tore flesh, warriors fell. Ethan shielded the cubs, covering him with his body. The beast slammed its tail into the ground, cracking stone. One cub broke free, running forward. It stood before the monster, its tiny chest heaving, glowing brighter than ever before. Then it let out a roar so powerful the ground shook. The beast froze, its red eyes flickering. The Drakari gasped in shock. The cub was no longer just a child. It was something more, something ancient. The monster hissed, backing away slowly. Then it turned and vanished into the jungle, the air filled with heavy silence. The cub stumbled, weak from its cry. Ethan rushed forward and caught it in his arms, holding it close. He whispered, "I've got you. I've got you." The Drakari stared in disbelief. Some bowed their heads, others looked afraid, but none moved against him. That night, the elder spoke of the prophecy again, his voice shaking. The cubs will awaken the heart of the jungle. Ethan lay awake by the fire, the cubs curled against him. His mind raced. Why did they trust him? Why had one of them released such power? And what was the jungle preparing them for? Far beyond the camp, in the black depths of the forest, a rival clan watched. Their eyes glowed red in the dark, their whispers carried with hatred. The cubs had chosen a human, and now the jungle itself stirred. The war for the planet was about to begin. The jungle did not rest, even in the darkest hours of night. Strange calls echoed through the trees, shadows moved between the leaves. But inside the Drakari camp, silence ruled. The tribe gathered around their fires, their golden eyes never leaving the human. Ethan sat with the cubs curled against him. He could feel their breathing, steady but restless. The youngest whimpered in its sleep, its glowing eyes flickering even while closed. Ethan whispered soft words, calming them. yet deep inside he felt the storm was coming. The Drakari leader paced along the fire pit, his scarred tail dragging in the dirt. His warriors argued in low growls. The prophecy divided them. Some wanted Ethan destroyed before more danger followed. Others believed the cub's choice meant he was untouchable. But as they fought among themselves, something darker crept closer. From the jungle's edge, dozens of glowing red eyes appeared. A rival clan. Their warriors stepped from the shadows, taller, heavier, their hides painted with blood and ash. They carried weapons made from bone and iron, their roars loud enough to shake the trees. The Drakari camp erupted. Warriors leapt to their feet, grabbing spears, the air filled with the scent of fire and fear. Ethan clutched the cubs tighter. His heart pounded. He looked at the rival clan, and he knew these ones would not hesitate. They had come for blood. The rival leader stepped forward, his hide black as night, his teeth jagged. His voice was like thunder as he shouted across the fire. His claw pointed at Ethan. Every Drakari knew the meaning. He wanted the human. The cubs hissed, clinging tighter. Their growls echoed louder than before. The Drakari gasped as their eyes glowed like burning suns. The rival clan roared and charged. The ground shook under their weight. The Drakari warriors met them head-on. Claws clashed with claws. Spears broke against hides. Blood spilled into the dirt. Roars and screams filled the night. Ethan ducked low, shielding the cubs as bodies slammed around him. A spear struck the ground inches from his head. He crawled backward, desperate, his breath fast and sharp. But the rival warriors pushed through. Several surrounded him, their claws raised. The cubs screeched, their small bodies trembled, their golden eyes blazed. Then it happened. The cubs cried out together, a sound so powerful it split the air. The fire pit flared high, the ground itself cracked, and from beneath the earth something stirred. The rival warriors froze. The Drakari themselves fell silent. All eyes turned as the dirt split apart and a massive shape rose, the ancient beast. It was larger than any predator Ethan had seen. Its body like stone covered in vines, its eyes glowing with a burning light. Its roar shattered the night, shaking trees to their roots. The rival clan stepped back in terror, but it was too late. The beast lashed out, its claws crushed warriors like insects. Its roar sent hunters flying into the fire. The cubs clung to Ethan, their cries echoing with strange power. The beast paused, its glowing eyes locking on him. Ethan's breath caught, his knife trembled in his hand. He was prey in the face of a god. But the cubs roared again, their tiny voices uniting. The beast stopped, its head tilted. For a moment, its burning eyes softened. The Drakari gasped. The ancient beast, destroyer of clans, killer of thousands, had stopped its rampage. Because of the cubs, the rival leader screamed in rage. He charged forward, claws raised to strike Ethan. But before he could reach, the beast swung its massive arm. The rival was thrown across the clearing, bones snapping. His body crumpled against the stone walls, silent forever. The battlefield froze. Both tribes stared in silence. Only the crackle of fire and the deep breathing of the beast filled the air. Ethan held the cubs close. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He had not fought. He had not struck. But somehow he was still standing. The Drakari leader stepped forward, his scarred face pale with shock. He lowered his head, his voice shaking as he spoke one word, chosen. The cubs purred, their glowing eyes locked on Ethan. The beast lowered itself slowly, its massive form bowing as if in respect. Ethan's heart pounded in his ears. He read to himself, "What are you making me into?" And from the ruins in the distance, the faint glow returned, pulsing like a heartbeat. The jungle had awakened, and its ancient power was no longer sleeping. The battlefield still smoked, the bodies of rival warriors scattered across the dirt. The massive beast stood silent now, its glowing eyes fixed on Ethan. The Drakari did not move. Their roars had died, replaced with fear and awe. Ethan's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He held the cubs close, their small hearts pounded against him. They purred, unafraid, as if they knew the beast was not their enemy. The Drakari leader finally broke the silence, his voice deep, heavy with meaning. He spoke to the elders, his words harsh, but filled with certainty. Ethan could not understand, but he saw the fear in the tribe's eyes. He saw the way their claws trembled. Then the eldest of the Drakari stepped forward, his body bent with age, his scales pale and cracked. He carried a staff carved with the same glowing symbols Ethan had seen in the ruins. The elder's golden eyes locked on Ethan. He spoke, and though Ethan could not understand the language, the tone pierced deep into his chest. The elder's claws traced shapes into the dirt, symbols Ethan recognized, the same ones that had burned in his vision. Ethan's breath caught. The elder was drawing human letters. His voice shook as he whispered, "No, this can't be." The elder slammed his staff into the ground. The fire flared. His voice rose, carrying words that every Drakari understood. Their faces twisted in fear, their eyes fixed on Ethan. The leader growled, repeating the word the tribe had whispered for days. Omen. The elder pointed his staff toward the ruins in the distance, his voice shaking as he spoke. Ethan didn't need translation this time. He felt the meaning like thunder inside his bones. The heart of the jungle will awaken when the cubs choose the stranger. The tribe gasped. Some bowed low, some hissed in rage. The prophecy was alive. Ethan's knees weakened. His vision from the ruins came back to him. Humans walking these jungles long ago, commanding the predators, building temples of stone. The jungle obeying their will. The elder's eyes burned into him. You are not the first. Ethan staggered, his mind reeled. Humanity had been here before, long before his time, and they had left behind more than ruins. They had left behind power. The cubs roared suddenly, their glowing eyes flaring. The beast outside the camp answered with a thunderous call. The ground trembled, the ruins in the distance pulsed again, brighter like a living heart. Ethan gasped, "It's calling." The Drakari warriors shifted uneasily, their claws tapped against their weapons. Some whispered of killing him before the prophecy was complete. Others whispered of kneeling before him. The leader silenced them with a roar, his scarred face twisted with conflict. He stepped close to Ethan, his burning eyes inches from the humans, his voice deep, broken with rage and fear. You are the one the jungle remembers. Ethan shook his head. I don't understand. But even as he said it, he felt something stirring deep inside. The ruins, the beast, the cubs. It was all connected. The jungle did not just remember humans. It waited for them. The elder's voice cracked as he finished the prophecy. When the stranger awakens the heart, the jungle will bow, or it will burn. The cubs whimpered, pressing against Ethan. Their glowing eyes reflected the firelight. The beast roared again, this time louder, shaking the camp to its core. The ruins glowed brighter in the distance, a pulse, steady like a heartbeat, a summons. The leader pointed his claws toward the jungle path. His voice cut through the night, commanding Ethan to move. The tribe fell silent. Every eye followed the human. The cubs clung tighter. Ethan felt his steps grow heavy, each one pulling him closer to the ruins, closer to the truth, closer to whatever destiny the jungle had carved into him long before he was born. He whispered softly, only to himself, "This is not just survival anymore." The cubs purred, as if answering. The ruins waited, glowing like the eyes of the planet itself. And far beyond the trees, in the deep shadows, something ancient shifted, its hunger awakening, its roar building. The jungle was ready to test the human. The ruins glowed like fire in the night. The jungle air trembled with every pulse. Ethan walked slowly toward them, the cubs clinging to him. His steps were heavy, his mind racing. The Drakari tribe followed behind, silent, their golden eyes filled with fear. The ancient beast waited at the edge of the clearing, its massive body still and patient, its glowing eyes locked on Ethan. It was not hunting him. It was watching, as if it knew what was coming. The elder raised his staff, his voice carrying through the night. He spoke of the prophecy, his words cracked with fear. When the cubs choose the stranger, the jungle will awaken. The tribe growled in unease. Some whispered of killing Ethan before the ruins opened. Others bowed low, ready to accept what the jungle had already chosen. Ethan placed his hand on the glowing stone wall. The light spread like fire across the carvings. The ground shook. The ruins opened, revealing a staircase that led deep underground. The cubs purred, urging him forward. He descended slowly, the cubs never letting go. The tribe followed at a distance, their growls echoing through the stone halls. The air was cold, filled with the scent of dust and age. At the bottom, a vast chamber opened before him. Machines stood silent, covered in vines. Symbols glowed on the walls. Some were alien, but others were human. clear and sharp, his chest too, tightened. Humans were here, he whispered. The cubs roared, their small voices shaking the chamber. The machines came alive, lights flared, engines hummed. The ground shook with power. The Drakari gasped in shock. Their claws scraped the stone in fear. The elder fell to his knees, his voice trembling. The heart of the jungle has awakened. The ancient beast entered the chamber, its massive head bowed low, its glowing eyes locked on Ethan. It roared once, the sound shaking every stone, but it did not attack. Instead, it knelt. The tribe followed, one by one. The Drakari dropped to their knees. Their growls turned to chants, their voices united in a single word: chosen. Ethan stood frozen, his chest rising and falling, his knife still in his hand. He was no longer prey. He was no longer a prisoner. He was something else. The cubs climbed higher onto him, purring louder than ever. Their eyes glowed like suns, and for the first time, Ethan understood. They had not just chosen him by accident, they had recognized him. The jungle had waited for a human, the ruins had waited, the beast had waited, the cubs were the key. But then the chamber shook again. A roar echoed from deep below, darker, stronger, filled with fury. A second beast, larger, more terrible, burst from the shadows, its body made of stone and flame, its roar a storm of rage. The Drakari screamed. Some fled, others raised their weapons, but their claws and spears were nothing against this monster. Ethan's heart pounded. He held the cubs close. "I can't fight this," he whispered. But the cubs roared, their voices uniting in a thunderous cry. The first beast rose, standing tall, answering their call. The two titans clashed, stone and fire against vine and bone. The chamber shook with every strike. The Drakari fell to the ground, covering their ears from the sound. Ethan staggered, the cubs pulled at him, their glowing eyes urging him toward the machines.
He placed his hand on the console. The machines roared to life. A blinding light shot through the chamber. The second beast screamed in pain, its fire dimming, its body crumbling. The first beast struck, driving it back into the depths. The chamber fell silent once more. Only the hum of machines remained. Ethan gasped, his chest heaving. The cubs purred, their golden eyes locked on him with pride. The Drakari rose slowly. Their leader stepped forward, his scarred face lowered in respect, his deep voice carried across the chamber. "You are no prey, you are protector." The tribe bowed low. The cubs wrapped around Ethan, refusing to let go. The ancient beast lowered itself again, bowing before him. Ethan stood there, trembling, his voice soft. "I didn't choose this," but deep inside, he knew the truth. The jungle had chosen him, the cubs had chosen him, and now the predators of this world bowed to him. Far above, the stars shone through cracks in the ruined ceiling. The galaxy beyond had no idea, but soon it would learn. The human who was chosen by predators was no longer just a survivor, he was something far greater. And the jungle whispered in the wind, its voice echoing like a promise, "This is only the beginning."